City of Spies, Estoril 1942, a new game by Stronghold Games. I picked up this game at Gen Con 2016, mainly because I was attracted by the topic. I'm interested in espionage fiction and in the actual history of espionage, and this is about the net of spies that were working in Portugal during World War II, especially around the Estoril. Neutral areas are the perfect place where espionage takes place in times of war, and that's precisely what happened here. In this game, you have a net of spies, and you're sending them around town to make contact with other spies. Basically, you're trying to increase your net of spies as much as possible by getting many spies and also possibly valuable ones. It is an majority area control game with a worker placement type of mechanics. It is just that the workers here sometimes assassinate each other. Let me show you how the game works. The game is played on a board that kind of looks like this. It doesn't have to be exactly this because this is a modular board that you put together by using 6 of 8 available tiles. It is not just that the board changes from game to game, but also the board changes throughout the game. The game is played in 4 rounds, and in each round you shuffle together these tiles. You also move them around a little bit to change the orientation. And then you use 6 of them to prepare the board for that specific round. Each tile is divided in 4 areas. There is a special one that has 5, but usually it's 4 areas. And of those areas, 1 is used to place a card that represents an agent that the players are trying to control, to gain control of. Then you have other spaces where the players will play their own agents, again, to try to influence the one that is available. Each tile has a number that indicates the order in which the tiles will be resolved: 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and 8. Also, spaces within a tile have numbers 1, 2, and 3, representing the order in which the characters that are placed in these spaces will activate their abilities when the tile is resolved. Last distinction about the board: the outer spaces, that is the one that are adjacent to the edge, are called as well the outer spaces, and then you have the inner area. This is important because when you place your tiles, you can either place them, your own agents, you can place them either on the outer edge or in the inner area if you have an agent that is adjacent to the tile, to the area where you want to place your tile. So you cannot just drop them in the middle of town unless you start moving your agents from the outside. Each player has a starting hand of 6 agents. Agents have a strength value, which is the number on the top left, a nationality, which only matters for certain game effects, and then icons indicating the abilities that the character has. For example, this is an assassin, this character has conspiracy, this character has seduction, nationalism or patriotism, and so on and so forth. Oh, this one has diplomacy that protects the character or other characters if the character decides to use the ability to protect someone else. Also, some characters have a gender, which is female. Somehow only female characters have a gender, I guess. The male gender is the default. You don't need to specify. It would have been nicer, actually, to have genders for both. Again, just so that one gender is not the default and the other one the exception. Finally, we have a number of victory points that the character is worth, and it is printed in the bottom left corner of the card, of the tile representing the agent. Each player also has a number of available cubes. Now, how does the game work? To set up the board, as we said, you place 6 tiles there. Then you need to place the agents that the players will try to gain control of. And these come from this deck of agents that are structured in the same way as the initial agents that they showed you. They just usually have better values, multiple abilities, and also, oopsie, some fell. Also, they're worth more victory points. You shuffle them together, and you place one of them in each of these spaces here. Some spaces say top secret in them, in which case you place the corresponding agent face down. Some other places do not have the top secret indication, in which case you place them face up. Then when the game starts, or I should say when a round starts, the players simply play agents from their hand, and they play them face up if they're placing them in a space that doesn't say top secret, or face down if they're placing it in a space that does say top secret. When you put down a card, you will mark it with a cube of your own color. At the beginning, that doesn't matter much because your initial agents are marked with an icon indicating the color. But later on, you will control other agents that are generic. They do not have a symbol printed on them, so you need the cube to mark who is using which agent. And so suppose this is my turn and I decide to play this character here, top secret, so I place it face down. There are also icons on the spaces that indicate actions that the players may perform as they are putting down a tile. And then suppose my opponent decides to place a card there, and then later I decide to put another character here, which I can because I have an adjacent character. My opponent is spreading out a little bit, so placing characters there, and so on and so forth, until the players have placed cards corresponding to the number of cubes. You may have more cards than cubes, so you can only put down cards for as long as you have cubes. Once all the available cards have been put on the board, starting in numerical order, you start resolving the tiles. To do so, you reveal the cards, the cards that are available on that tile. And then starting from the space number 1 and then 2 and 3, you activate possible abilities. After the abilities of the cards that there have been activated, the player that has the total highest strength wins the character that was available there, that was there for grabs. If there is a tie, the player with a character in the lowest number on the tile grabs the character. Here there will be no contest, so I get this character here. Also, I need to activate the ability of this character, which is to place a cube on himself or another character, and that cube will protect the character that has it from assassination or seduction. And some other abilities, yes, if you have seduction, you can move another character to an empty space of the area in which you are, and she, for example, has seduction. If you have assassination, didn't I put down any assassin here? No, I've been so nice. If you have assassination, bang bang, you can, when that is revealed and when it is time to resolve that effect, you can eliminate a tile, a character in your own area, so that can greatly alter the capabilities of the opponent as you reduce their strength, and maybe you kill a character before the character gets to activate their ability, so neat stuff. Conspiracy. Conspiracies, the symbol here, it is the Hydra Cymbal. And it allows you to look at the top card of the draw stack from which you're drawing characters that are available for players to acquire. And you can swap it with, well, actually you also look at the card that is available for grabs right now, and you put one of them back in the area where the available card should be, and one at the bottom. So it's not that you swap the one there with the one on top, but you simply you can swap the one on top with the one that was there, and the one that's there goes at the bottom of the deck if you decide to change the card that is available. So after a round has been played and characters are assigned, the players retrieve their characters. You do not retrieve them immediately because there may be effects that that the presence of characters will trigger even though the characters have already gone. For example, the characters with the nationalist symbol with the patriotic symbol have an advantage if they are working in combination with other characters with the same nationality. So you have to keep the characters the players have played on the board until everything is resolved. But at that point, yes, you do get back your own characters together with any character that you may have acquired, that you have grabbed from the board. And at the point, you will probably have more than 6 tiles, 6 cards in your hand, and you need to discard down to 6. So very important decisions here, because some characters have very good abilities, but also good victory points. At the end of the game, we will score 1 point for each card that you discard. So you discard them, but they go in your personal discard pile. But you will score the full amount of victory points of characters in your hand. So this card, yes, if I want to keep a character with better abilities in my hand, I can discard this one, but at the end of the game, this one will only be worth 1 point, as opposed to if I keep this card in my hand, that at the end of the game will be 4 victory points. So that's pretty neat. Scoring points, there are also missions. 4 of these missions will be available during each game. The available missions are placed on the table at the beginning of the game, and the symbols indicate other possibilities of scoring. Basically, the player that has the most of a symbol on a mission gets to score the mission and gets to score 6 points. So, for example, the player that has the majority of Portuguese characters in their hand at the end of the game wins the game. Majority of Germans, majority of female characters, majority of characters with this symbol, and so on and so forth. So at the end of the game, you score based on the missions that you completed, the value in victory points of the cards in your hand, plus the number of cards in your discard pile. You total victory points on all those sources, and the player with the highest total is the winner of the game. Also, something that I did not mention, it is that when you're scoring the location tiles, the ones with 4 or 5 spaces, each has a specific ability that is usually triggered during scoring time. For example, there is the casino that allows you to roll dice to modify the strength of the spies that you have there. So sometimes you send there a spy that is not all that great, so would not make it against the brutal mathematics in other areas, and you hope that there is some chance there. There are small icons that remind you of those things, and be sure you'll forget about those icons when you score, at least the first couple of games, but even later. It is just that in the heat of the moment, you're so excited about, scoring and seeing if you get to assassinate somebody before they do something else to you, or if you get to protect somebody, and that most likely you'll forget, or at least you'll often forget. An exception is, of course, that sometimes players will have built their strategy around those symbols because they want to maximize a certain effect. Then it is more likely that somebody will remember. I forgot to mention those symbols in my video, in my main segment, so that may happen. But it's also part of the fun. I mean, what I like about this game is it has a really remarkable balance between the simplicity of its core idea, put down a spy, and that's it. That's your turn. And then the layers that the game builds around the very simple idea. Because then, of course, the order in which you score the tiles matter, because you want to activate certain effects, you want certain people to be available to work in certain synergies with others. So the order in which the tiles activate, the symbols on the tiles, the order within which the characters activate. So you have this very intricate net of effects that somehow mirrors to me the game, the maze of mirrors, and all the complicated and counterintuitive aspects of espionage that are precisely meant to be intricate so that people do not see through them too easily. I was afraid that the game would feel fiddly. I admired the idea. My turn, I put down a tile and that's it. I was afraid that when it came to scoring, things may get too fiddly, but that didn't That wasn't the case. Everything felt very organic. Everything made a lot of sense thematically and game-wise. Because after all, when we're scoring, unless somebody's not taking the game seriously, then everybody's engaged because you want to see how your strategy paid off. Everybody's involved, so it's fun and it feels very cohesive. The various steps of taking into account all the effects and checking that everything is happening in the right order did not feel cumbersome at all. Actually, that is part of the thrill, part of the excitement. As I see certain tiles that are scored and the characters are still there and may create synergies with the characters later, I realize, oh shoot, those characters that the player played are going to affect this and they're going to affect that. So that the resolution feels very organic. It really feels like it's pretty much part of the game. In a certain sense, it almost feels like that is the game, and the placement of the tiles is just a preparation. Although technically it is the opposite, because it is when you're placing the tiles that you're making most of the decisions. And there are some really interesting decisions here. Again, it is just about where do you put down your tile and in which order and when, because the opponent may place their tiles, their agents in certain areas that will make it hard for you then to add people, because now only the inner area is available and you have to maneuver around that to be able to get there, unless you decide to use again some other effects that will move things around, that will create certain effects. So the timing is important, the order in which you put them down is important, the location in which you put them, in which you place your agent is important, and the ones that you have in your hand. The other very interesting level of decision that you have is when you are deciding what you discard and what you keep, which is very interesting, also the tough decisions, and it is also what gives the game a nice sense of progression. When I see games that basically are structured around repeat the main turn structure 3 times, 4 times, 5 times, I'm always a little bit worried, because I do not know that what is going to be in there to make the game feel different. If the structure is do the same round 4 times, I want to make sure that gameplay wise and experience wise, it is not doing the same thing 4 times. And luckily enough, the cycling of the agents that you have from the board to your hand to the discard pile gives me that sense of progression, gives me the sense that my hand of characters changes over time, and precisely because of this, then different opportunities emerge. I will play differently. Now I have certain characters that work very well together because they're patriotic and they have a lot of other pulse of their nationality they can count on. But I noticed that you picked up a veritable net of assassins, so now I better keep some diplomats in my hand so I can protect my people. Otherwise, I may have the best people in the world, but if they're dead, they're not going to be very useful. So again, very interesting levels of decisions that emerge from such simple mechanics. Put a card, put down tiles, resolve the tiles, discard down to 6 at the end. So it's a game that really pleasantly surprised me. The theme is there. I really like the theme. The components are amazing. I keep talking, what we have here, those tiles representing the agents, in most of the games, those would be cards. But these are nice, sturdy tiles of very high quality. If you don't know anything about the theme, about the history, that's perfectly fine. You will still enjoy the game. If you do know the history of espionage and the history of the specific theater of espionage in World War II, then there are a lot of interesting references here, Easter eggs that you can find, some more obvious than others. You have Ian Fleming, he's one of the characters. He was not the writer of James Bond yet, but legend has it that it was in this period, as he was working for the British Naval Intelligence, that he got the idea of the character that later would become James Bond. So he's here not as a writer, but still as a spy, which he was in World War II. You have Dushko Popov, who again legend has it may or may not be the inspiration, may or may not be the guy that gave Fleming the idea for James Bond, and may or may not have met Fleming here. And actually, all you need to do is place the 2 characters at the casino, and you have solved the historical riddle. Yes, they did meet at the casino, as legend has it, and so it appears that it's not a legend, not in the world of this game. And then you have other Easter eggs like this. The more you know the story, the more you enjoy these references. And if you don't know anything about the story, you will still enjoy the game because gameplay-wise, the game is very solid. City of Spies, Astorial 1942. Simple core with multi-layered gameplay that feels rewarding and engaging. Definitely a good game, highly recommended. City of Spies, Estoril 1942.